Picture this moment. You're living your life, focused on your purpose, when someone approaches you with venom in their words. Perhaps they ridicule your dreams. Perhaps they attack your character. Perhaps they attempt to destroy everything you stand for. What's your move? The majority of people? They lose composure. They become defensive. They justify themselves desperately. They surrender control to their feelings. But here's what Machiavelli discovered centuries ago, and what the masses will never comprehend. The person who allows insults to shake them has already been conquered. You understand, the instant you respond emotionally, you've surrendered. The instant you permit another person to dictate your emotional state, you've transferred your authority to them on a golden platter. But what if I revealed there's a different path? What if I revealed that you could achieve a mental state where nobody, and I emphasize nobody, could shatter your tranquility? Where attacks slide off you like rain off granite. Where you become so psychologically impenetrable that others begin to respect your composure more than they respect anyone's fury. That's precisely what this training will provide you. These aren't mere suggestions. These are the shadow principles of mental sovereignty that Machiavelli himself would have employed to remain immovable in a universe filled with disorder. By the conclusion of this training, you'll understand how to transform into the individual who never gets disturbed, never surrenders authority, and never grants anyone the pleasure of witnessing you collapse. Comment this now. I stand untouchable. ***. Before we explore the principles, you must grasp this essential reality. Others can only disturb you when you authorize them to do so. Consider it carefully. When someone attacks you verbally, the attack itself is merely language, merely vibrations traveling through air. The strength doesn't originate from their language. It originates from your response to that language. Authority initiates where emotional reactions terminate. The majority believe being unbothered equals being defenseless, being submissive, being conquered. They couldn't be more mistaken. Non-reaction isn't defenselessness. It's supremacy. It's the ultimate expression of mastery. When you cease responding to others' provocations, you strip them of their influence. You transform into the commander of your own psychological state. You transform into something formidable. And that's precisely what we're constructing here. Formidable in the most powerful sense. Formidable because you're unpredictable. Formidable because you cannot be controlled. Formidable because you possess absolute authority. Comment below. My calm is my power. Here are Machiavelli's 8 shadow principles that will render you unbothered, impenetrable, and unstoppable. Principle 1. Anticipate betrayal before it manifests. The majority navigate existence anticipating justice. They anticipate others to demonstrate kindness, to demonstrate respect, to honor the social contract. And when others fail to do so, they're astonished. They're wounded. They're defenseless. But Machiavelli comprehended a brutal truth. Disrespect isn't coincidental. It's intentional. ***. Others employ it to examine you, to dominate you, to determine if they can penetrate your defenses. When you anticipate treachery, jealousy, and contempt, nothing catches you off guard. When you're equipped for the worst conduct humans can demonstrate, you become unbreakable. Consider it this way. If you're navigating through a hazardous territory, you don't express surprise when you encounter danger. You're equipped. You're vigilant. You're prepared. Existence is that hazardous territory. And the majority, they're navigating through it with their defenses lowered, questioning why they continuously get wounded. Machiavelli once declared, the intelligent person accomplishes immediately what the foolish person accomplishes eventually. The intelligent individual prepares for disrespect. The foolish individual gets ambushed repeatedly. When you anticipate others to attempt to disturb you, their attempts become foreseeable. When their attempts become foreseeable, they surrender all influence over you. This doesn't render you pessimistic. It renders you pragmatic. It renders you equipped. It renders you powerful. Right below, I own my reactions, no one else does. From this moment onward, presume that certain individuals will attempt to disrespect you. Presume that certain individuals will attempt to dismantle you. When you're equipped for it, you can manage it with frozen composure. Think about the warriors of ancient times. They didn't enter battle hoping their enemies would be merciful. They entered expecting the worst and prepared for everything. That preparation made them legends. You need to adopt the same mentality. Every interaction is a potential battlefield. Not because you're paranoid, but because you're prepared. And preparation is the foundation of invincibility. When disrespect arrives at your doorstep tomorrow, you won't flinch. You won't scramble for a response. You won't question why someone would treat you that way. You'll simply recognize it for what it is, a test. And you'll pass that test with ease because you saw it coming from miles away. The unprepared person asks, "Why would they do this to me?" The prepared person thinks, "Ah, there it is. Right on schedule. Post this. I am my own authority." Which mentality do you think keeps you unbothered? Which mentality gives you power? The answer is obvious. Principle 2. Weaponize silence. Here's something the majority never recognize. Your silence carries more force than any response you could ever construct. When someone attempts to provoke you, when they attack you, ridicule you, or attempt to initiate conflict, they're seeking one thing, your response. They desire to witness you become furious. They desire to witness you justify yourself. They desire to witness you surrender control. Your response is their triumph. Your silence is yours. Reflect on the previous time someone attempted to provoke you and you remained absolutely silent. What occurred? They likely became uneasy. They likely intensified their efforts. They likely began to question themselves. That's the force of silence. When you don't provide them the response they're seeking, you compel them to question everything. Did their attack fail? Are you more powerful than they calculated? Are you strategizing something? Silence generates enigma. Enigma generates anxiety. Anxiety generates respect. Asterisk, asterisk. Machiavelli once declared, "It is superior to be respected than adored if you cannot achieve both." Your silence renders you unpredictable. Unpredictable individuals are formidable. Formidable individuals are respected. But here's the critical element. Your silence cannot be the silence of someone who's wounded and doesn't possess a response. It must be the silence of someone who's selecting not to engage. There's a massive distinction. The wounded person's silence broadcasts vulnerability. The selective person's silence radiates authority. How do you cultivate this form of silence? Training. Drop an affirmation. Every action I take is strategic. The subsequent time someone attempts to provoke you, calculate to 10 before you engage. Then calculate to 20. Then attempt remaining silent entirely. Observe how they respond. Observe how uncomfortable they become. Observe how your silence devastates their pride more effectively than any attack ever could. I'll share a story. There was a man who worked in a competitive corporate environment. Every day, one of his colleagues would make snide remarks about his work, his ideas, his contributions. For weeks, he defended himself, explained himself, justified himself. And every time he did, the colleague seemed to grow stronger, more confident in his attacks. Then one day, he tried something different. When the colleague made another cutting remark in a meeting, he simply looked at him, said nothing, and returned to his notes. The silence that followed was deafening. The colleague tried again, louder this time, more aggressive. Still nothing. Just calm, powerful silence. Within a week, the colleague had stopped entirely. The attacks had lost their purpose. There was no reaction to feed on, no emotional response to validate the effort. That's the power you're learning to harness. Silence isn't emptiness. It's the most loaded weapon in your arsenal. When you master silence, you master control. When you master control, you master every interaction. And when you master every interaction, you become the person everyone instinctively respects, even if they can't explain why. Declare it. I decide what matters, I ignore the rest. Principle 3. Emotional concealment is dominance. Fury, tears, excessive explanation. These are all indicators of vulnerability that your adversaries will weaponize against you. The instant you display unrestrained emotion, you've disclosed where they can wound you. You've revealed your weak points. But here's what the majority don't comprehend. You don't need to eradicate emotions. You need to govern them. There's a massive distinction between experiencing anger and displaying anger. The master experiences everything but reveals nothing. The amateur reveals everything and governs nothing. Asterisk asterisk. When someone attempts to provoke you, you might experience that fire igniting in your chest. Your pulse might accelerate. Your hands might tremble. That's natural. That's human. But what distinguishes the powerful from the powerless is what occurs next. The powerless individual allows those emotions to govern their actions. The powerful individual acknowledges those emotions and then determines how to engage. Machiavelli once declared, "Since affection and respect can scarcely coexist together, if we must select between them, it is far more secure to be respected than loved." Emotional governance renders you unpredictable. When others cannot predict your emotional responses, they cannot control you. When they cannot control you, they begin to respect you, even fear you. Display composure even when you're burning internally. That's genuine dominance. That's genuine authority. Here's a method that functions effectively. When you experience powerful emotions ascending, inhale deeply and visualize you're observing the situation occur to another person. What guidance would you provide that individual? How would you desire them to engage? This mental separation provides you the space you require to select your response instead of merely reacting instinctively. Remember, emotions are data, not directives. They inform you something is occurring, but they don't dictate what you accomplish about it. Smash the like button if you refuse to be manipulated. Let me paint you a picture of what emotional mastery looks like in real life. Imagine a CEO in a boardroom. A rival executive attacks her strategy, questions her competence in front of the entire leadership team. Everyone watches to see how she'll react. The amateur CEO would get defensive, raise her voice, list her credentials, maybe even attack back. Everyone would see the emotion, the loss of control, the weakness. The master CEO? She pauses. She takes a breath. She looks at the rival with calm, almost amused eyes. "That's certainly one perspective," she says evenly, then smoothly redirects the conversation to the data. No defensiveness. No visible anger. Just controlled, calculated response. Who do you think commands more respect in that room? Who do you think people fear crossing? The answer is clear. That's the level we're building you toward. Not someone who doesn't feel emotions, but someone who refuses to let emotions make their decisions for them. Your emotions will test you every day. Someone will cut you off in traffic. A family member will say something hurtful. A coworker will take credit for your work. In each of these moments, you have a choice: react like an amateur or respond like a master. The amateur lets the moment control them. The master controls the moment. Share this with someone who needs mental armor. Principle 4. Never justify yourself to small minds. Here's a mistake that obliterates most people's authority. They justify excessively. When someone attacks you or challenges your character, your natural impulse is to defend yourself. You desire to clarify why they're incorrect. You desire to rationalize your decisions. You desire to demonstrate your value. But here's what Machiavelli understood. If you justify excessively, you confess vulnerability. Consider it. Powerful individuals don't need to justify themselves constantly. Self-assured individuals don't need to rationalize every decision. Dominant individuals don't need to demonstrate their value to everyone who challenges it. When you justify, you're engaging in their game by their regulations. You're accepting their framework of the situation. You're confessing that their perspective matters sufficiently to alter your conduct. Instead, you need to dominate the framework. You need to make them engage in your game by your regulations. How do you accomplish this? Instead of justifying, you reframe. Instead of clarifying, you redirect. Instead of demonstrating, you dismiss. For instance, if someone declares, "You're not qualified enough for that position," instead of enumerating all your credentials, you might state, "Interesting perspective," and then alter the subject. Or you might simply laugh and state nothing at all. You're not engaging with their attempt to position you defensively. You're demonstrating that their perspective doesn't merit a serious engagement. Subscribe to Unlock Strategies Most People Will Never Know. Machiavelli once declared, "Everyone observes what you appear to be. Few experience what you genuinely are." When you refuse to justify yourself against every trivial attack, you appear more powerful. When you dominate the framework of every exchange, you transform into the dominant force in the dialogue. This doesn't indicate you never advocate for yourself. It indicates you select when and how to engage based on what serves your objectives, not based on your emotional responses. Think about the most powerful people you know or have studied. Do they spend their time defending themselves against every criticism? Do they justify their choices to everyone who questions them? Absolutely not. They make decisions and move forward. They set boundaries and enforce them. They control the narrative instead of reacting to everyone else's version of events. There's a reason for that. Justification is a trap. It's an endless cycle. No matter how well you explain yourself, someone will always find something to criticize. No matter how thoroughly you defend your position, someone will always question it. The only way to win that game is to refuse to play it. Hit the bell and level up your mind every week. Let me share what this looks like in practice. Imagine you've made a controversial decision at work. Maybe you rejected a traditional approach in favor of an innovative one. The critics come out immediately. Why would you do that? That's not how we do things. You should have consulted more people. The justifying person spends the next week explaining their reasoning to everyone, trying to get buy-in, seeking approval. They're exhausted, and the critics are still criticizing because that's what critics do. The powerful person. I've made the decision based on the information available. We'll evaluate results in 30 days. That's it. No lengthy justifications. No seeking approval. Just clarity and forward movement. Which person do you think sleeps better at night? Which person maintains their authority? Which person do others respect more? When you stop justifying yourself to people who don't matter, you free up enormous mental and emotional energy. Energy you can redirect toward actually building something worthwhile. Principle 5. Independence from all judgments. This principle will surprise most individuals. You need to detach from all judgments about you, both favorable and unfavorable. The majority believe the challenge is caring excessively about criticism, but that's only half the challenge. The other half is caring excessively about praise. When you require praise to feel positive about yourself, you become just as fragile as someone who's devastated by criticism. You become dependent on other people's judgments for your self-value. Praise and criticism are both restraints. They both make you dependent on external approval. They both strip you of your internal power. Consider it. If you require others to inform you you're excellent to feel excellent, then you also need to concern yourself with others informing you you're inadequate. If you depend on compliments, you'll also be susceptible to attacks. The genuinely powerful individual stands on their own foundation, their values, their discipline, their internal compass. This doesn't indicate you disregard all feedback. It indicates you assess feedback based on its utility, not based on whether it makes you feel positive or negative. Are you reacting or leading? Share your answer. Is this criticism helping you advance? Then absorb it. Is this praise accurate and inspiring? Then value it. But neither should govern your emotional state or self-perception. Machiavelli once declared, "The primary method for estimating the intelligence of a leader is to examine the individuals he has surrounding him." Surround yourself with individuals whose judgments actually matter. Individuals who understand you profoundly. individuals who desire the best for you, individuals who have demonstrated their wisdom over time. Everyone else? Their judgments are merely noise. Regard them as such. When you cease requiring external approval, you become genuinely liberated. When you cease fearing external criticism, you become genuinely powerful. Here's a practice that assists. For 1 week, attempt to proceed without seeking any approval from others. Don't fish for compliments. Don't inquire if individuals appreciated your work. Don't verify how many likes your posts received. Notice how this feels. Notice how it alters your conduct. Notice how much mental energy you conserve when you're not constantly seeking approval. Let me tell you about 2 people I observed in the same workplace. Both were talented. Both were hardworking. But their relationship with external validation was completely different. The first person constantly sought feedback. What did you think of my presentation? Was that email okay? Do you think the boss liked my idea? Every decision was followed by a desperate need for validation. And here's what happened. People started to see them as insecure, uncertain, not leadership material. The second person did their work, made their decisions, and moved forward. They listened to feedback from people they respected, but they didn't need constant reassurance. They didn't fish for compliments. They didn't panic over criticism. And people saw them as confident, self-assured, leadership potential. Same workplace. Same opportunities. Completely different outcomes. The difference? Independence from external judgment. Tell me, how will you turn criticism into fuel? When you achieve this independence, something remarkable happens. People start to respect you more, not less. They start to seek your approval rather than you seeking theirs. The dynamic shifts entirely in your favor. This is because humans are instinctively drawn to people who don't need them. We respect those who stand firm on their own foundation. We're attracted to the energy of someone who isn't desperately seeking our validation. Become that person. Build your foundation so strong that external judgments, positive or negative, are just weather patterns passing overhead. You acknowledge them, you assess if they're useful, and then you continue on your path regardless. Principle 6. Condition yourself for supremacy. This principle concerns training your own mind like you would train an elite warrior. Every time you remain composed when someone attempts to provoke you, you need to reward yourself. Every time you respond emotionally when you could have stayed controlled, you need to discipline yourself. This isn't about being severe with yourself. This is about establishing the correct incentives for the conduct you desire. Your brain learns through consequences. If staying composed feels rewarding and reacting feels uncomfortable, your brain will naturally begin selecting composure over reaction. How this functions practically. When you successfully stay composed in a provoking situation, do something beneficial for yourself. Acquire yourself something small. Enjoy a relaxing activity. Watch your favorite content. Whatever makes you feel positive. When you respond emotionally when you could have stayed controlled, do something that requires discipline, additional exercise, cold immersion, no entertainment for the evening, whatever pushes you slightly outside your comfort zone. Over time, your subconscious mind begins to associate staying composed with pleasure and reacting with discomfort. This makes self-mastery automatic instead of forced. Pick one law, practice it daily, and watch your control grow. The majority attempt to construct self-mastery through willpower alone. But willpower is limited. It gets exhausted. It fails when you require it most. Intelligent individuals construct self-mastery through systems. They make the correct choice the easy choice. Machiavelli once declared, "Individuals are so simple and so ready to obey present necessities that the one who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." Don't deceive yourself into believing you can rely on willpower perpetually. Construct systems that make you more powerful automatically. The objective is to reach a point where staying composed feels natural and reacting feels foreign. Where your default response to provocation is frozen composure. This requires time. This requires consistency. but the reward is becoming literally unbotherable. Think about how athletes train. They don't just hope they'll perform well under pressure. They create conditions in practice that simulate pressure. They reward good performance and analyze poor performance. They build automatic responses through repetition and conditioning. You're doing the same thing, but for your emotional responses instead of physical performance. Let me give you a concrete example. Say someone cuts you off in traffic. In the past, you might have honked, cursed, let it ruin your next 15 minutes. That's the old pattern. Now, with this principle, here's what happens. They cut you off. You feel that surge of anger. But instead of acting on it, you take a breath. You recognize the emotion without becoming it. You continue driving calmly. When you arrive at your destination, you acknowledge that victory. I handled that well. I stayed in control. Maybe you listen to your favorite song as a reward. Small, immediate positive reinforcement. Master one principle this week. Then move to the next. Over time, your brain learns, when I stay calm in traffic, good things happen. When I lose my temper, I create problems for myself. The conditioning becomes automatic. This works for all provocations, not just traffic. The coworker who makes passive-aggressive comments. The family member who knows exactly which buttons to push. The stranger online who tries to start an argument. Each situation is an opportunity to train yourself. Each successful moment of self-control is a repetition that makes the next one easier. Each failure is data about what you need to work on. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is progress. You're literally rewiring your brain's default responses, and that takes time. But every day you practice this principle, you become a slightly more controlled, slightly more powerful version of yourself. And those small improvements compound. 6 months from now, you'll look back and barely recognize the person who used to get bothered by things that now slide off you like water off glass. Principle 7. Strategic indifference as dominance. The majority believe they need to retaliate when someone attacks them. They believe they need to defend themselves, dispute, or demonstrate the attacker incorrect. But masters comprehend, the more you don't care, the more they care. Indifference frustrates manipulators more than fury ever could. When you become furious, you're providing them what they desire, evidence that they can govern your emotions. But when you're indifferent, you're demonstrating they possess no authority over you at all. When someone attacks you and you respond with complete indifference, not coldness, not rudeness, just genuine absence of concern, it's devastating to their pride. They anticipated fury. They anticipated hurt. Instead, they received nothing. Remember, action creates power. Apply what you learn immediately. But here's the critical element. This must be genuine indifference, not fabricated indifference. Individuals can discern the distinction. How do you cultivate genuine indifference? You focus on what actually matters to you. You invest your emotional energy in your objectives, your relationships, your development. You possess bigger things to contemplate than what random individuals state about you. Machiavelli once declared, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves." One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. Follow this channel if you're ready to be untouchable in life. Strategic indifference means knowing when something actually deserves your attention. Not everything does. Most things don't. The powerful person has a mental filter. Does this affect my goals? Is this person someone whose opinion matters to my life? If no, then indifference is automatic. The person who reacts to everything is easy to control. The person who responds to only what they choose is impossible to control. Principle 8. Absolute detachment is invincibility. Individuals can only disturb you when they discover an entrance. When they uncover something you care about so intensely that you'll sacrifice your tranquility to defend it. But when you're genuinely detached, when nothing external governs your inner tranquility, you become impenetrable. This doesn't indicate you don't care about anything. It indicates you don't permit your caring to make you susceptible to manipulation. You can love your family without permitting threats against them to govern your decisions. You can be proud of your work without permitting criticism of it to devastate your confidence. You can desire success without permitting setbacks to destroy your spirit. Detachment indicates you possess preferences, not dependencies. You desire things, but you don't require them for your fundamental sense of self-value and tranquility. When nothing external governs your tranquility, individuals lose their authority over you. When individuals cannot manipulate your emotions, they cannot manipulate your conduct. This makes you formidable in the best possible manner. Not formidable because you'll harm others, but formidable because others cannot harm you. Learn how masters dominate situations without lifting a finger. Consider the most impenetrable individual you understand. What makes them that way? It's likely not that they don't care about anything. It's that they don't permit their caring to make them desperate, needy, or controllable. Machiavelli once declared, "He who is highly esteemed is not easily conspired against." When you're impenetrable, individuals respect you. They might not always appreciate you, but they respect your power. They respect your self-mastery. They respect your independence. And respect is more valuable than affection because respect endures longer and runs deeper. To cultivate this detachment, practice holding things lightly. Enjoy your successes without clinging to them. Learn from your failures without being devastated by them. Value your relationships without being desperate for approval. The objective is to reach a point where you're fully engaged with existence, but not dependent on any particular outcome for your happiness. Let me illustrate what this looks like with a real example. Imagine an entrepreneur who's built a successful business. They've invested years of their life into it. Then a market shift happens, and suddenly their business model is threatened. The person without detachment panics. Their entire identity is wrapped up in this business. If it fails, they fail. They make desperate decisions. They can't think clearly. The fear of loss controls every move they make. The person with detachment? They feel the concern, absolutely. They care deeply about the business. But their inner peace isn't dependent on that one outcome. They can think strategically. They can pivot if needed. They can even walk away if that's the wise move, because their self-worth isn't tied to this single venture. Which person do you think navigates the crisis better? Which person makes better decisions? Which person actually has a better chance of success? Become the person who stays calm while the world panics around them. Detachment gives you options. When you're not desperate, you can negotiate from strength. When you're not needy, people can't manipulate you with promises or threats. When your peace comes from within, external chaos can't shake your foundation. This is the highest level of the principles we've covered. This is where everything comes together. The expectation of disrespect, the power of silence, the control of emotions, the refusal to justify, the independence from judgment, the self-conditioning, the strategic indifference, all of these build toward this final state of absolute detachment. When you reach this level, something remarkable happens. You don't have to try to be unbothered anymore. You just are. It's not an act or a technique. It's who you've become. People sense this in you. They feel that you're operating from a different place than they are. And that creates a natural respect, sometimes even awe. Think about the historical figures who embodied this principle. Leaders who faced imprisonment, exile, death threats, and remained internally untouched. Philosophers who lost everything materially but maintained their inner tranquility. Warriors who faced battle with calm hearts because their peace wasn't dependent on survival. You're building toward that same unshakable core. Not because you're trying to be like them, but because you're discovering the same truth they discovered. Nothing external can disturb you unless you grant it permission. Step into a mindset where no one can disturb your peace. Practice holding everything in your life with an open hand. Value it, invest in it, care about it deeply, but don't cling so tightly that losing it would destroy you. This isn't pessimism. This is wisdom. This is strength. The detached person lives more fully than the attached person because they're not paralyzed by fear of loss. They can take risks, make bold moves, speak uncomfortable truths, all because their foundation is internal and unshakable. This is the ultimate goal of all these principles. Not to make you cold or disconnected, but to make you so grounded in your own center that the storms of life can rage around you and never touch that center. When you achieve this, you'll understand what Machiavelli meant when he spoke of true power. It's not about controlling others. It's about being so completely in control of yourself that no one else's actions can determine your state of being. If you've arrived at this point, you now possess something the majority will never obtain: the understanding of how to become genuinely unbothered. These 8 principles aren't merely theories. They're practical instruments you can employ starting immediately to transform yourself into someone who cannot be shaken, cannot be manipulated, and cannot be controlled by the actions of others. Remember, indifference is not defenselessness. It is sovereignty. It is the crown only the powerful can wear. ***. When someone attempts to provoke you tomorrow, you'll remember Principle 2 and respond with powerful silence. When someone criticizes you next week, you'll remember Principle 5 and remain detached from their judgment. When someone attempts to drag you into their chaos next month, you'll remember Principle 8 and stay impenetrable. Which principle will you master first? Comment below. ***. But here's the reality. Understanding without execution is worthless. These principles only function if you employ them. They only transform your existence if you transform your conduct. Begin with one principle. Select the one that resonated with you most. Practice it for the subsequent week. Master it, then add another. Before you realize it, you'll be the individual everyone wonders about. The individual who stays composed when everyone else loses their minds. The individual who seems immune to the chaos that devastates others. You'll be impenetrable. If this training helped you comprehend something essential about authority and self-mastery, demonstrate your commitment. Share this content with someone in your existence who gets disturbed too easily, someone who responds to every provocation, someone who needs to learn these principles. And if you desire to learn more secrets of authority, influence, and mental power that the majority never discover, commit to this journey. Join this community of individuals who refuse to be controlled by external forces. I'm going to teach you everything the masters understood but never shared publicly. Strategies that have been hidden in plain sight for centuries. Methods that separate the truly powerful from those who merely appear powerful. The powerless respond. The powerful respond strategically. The masters don't require to do either. They simply exist in a state of unbreakable authority. Which one will you be? The choice, as always, is yours. But now, you have the map. Now, you have the principles. Now, you have the power. The question is, will you use it? Your transformation into an unbothered, untouchable force begins the moment you apply the first principle. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right now. I am cold, calm, untouchable. The world is full of chaos. But you're about to become the eye of the storm. Perfectly still. Perfectly powerful. Perfectly untouchable. Welcome to mastery.